In the quiet town of Harmony Creek, a 90-year-old widow named Dorothy Larkin was about to teach a fearsome gang of bikers a lesson they'd never forget. To anyone who passed by her weathered little cottage, Dot seemed like any other sweet elderly neighbor. She wore modest floral dresses, baked pies for charity drives, and offered advice at the weekly town council meetings. But Dorothy Larkin had a past that few knew. Before settling in Harmony Creek, she was a decorated air reconnaissance officer during the Korean War, with countless combat missions under her belt. While her medals were tucked away in a dusty drawer, her mind remained as sharp as the day she led covert aerial missions behind enemy lines. Life in Harmony Creek had always been peaceful, until the Iron Jackals, a notorious motorcycle gang, roared into town. Led by the ruthless and cunning Mace Connors, the gang had quickly asserted dominance over the town, demanding protection fees from local businesses and intimidating anyone who dared to resist. Dot watched the chaos unfold from her porch, her piercing blue eyes narrowing as she observed the gang terrorize the people she'd grown to love. One fateful morning, Dot pulled her weathered station wagon into Ozzy's gas stop, where she had stopped every Wednesday morning for years. As she filled her tank, the distant growl of motorcycles rumbled in the air. It wasn't long before the Iron Jackals descended like vultures. Their chrome bikes gleamed under the morning sun as they surrounded the gas station. "Morning, Dot," greeted Ozzy, the station attendant, his voice tinged with unease as the gang dismounted. Doc's hand remained steady on the pump, her demeanor calm despite the encroaching threat. The Jackals had no idea who they were dealing with. Mace Connors, a towering figure clad in black leather and sunglasses, swaggered toward Dot with his signature smirk. "Well, well, what have we here? Granny's day out?" Dot barely glanced his way. "Just getting my gas. You and your boys seem to be in quite the hurry. I'd hate to hold you up." Mace chuckled darkly, the other bikers joining in. "Feisty, huh? Tell me, sweetheart, what would a little old lady like you know about anything worth fighting for?" At that moment, one of the bikers, Snake, noticed the emblem on Dot's license plate frame, a discreet but unmistakable indication of her military service. "Yo, Mace, check it out! The granny thinks she's some kind of war hero." Mace leaned in close, his grin turning sinister. "You a vet, huh? What were you, Grandma? Filing papers? Sewing buttons?" Straightened her posture, her steely gaze locking with his. "I was in the skies, while boys like you played pretend with slingshots." The Jackals laughed, but Mace's smile faltered. He grabbed Dot's arm roughly, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. "You've got a smart mouth. Someone needs to teach you some respect." Dot didn't flinch. Instead, she replied with chilling composure. "Respect is earned, and from where I stand, all I see are cowards hiding behind their bikes." The gang's laughter died down as tension thickened. Ozzy, who had been cowering behind the counter, reached for his phone to call the police, but Dot knew the local authorities wouldn't arrive in time. Mace leaned in closer. Unbeknownst to the gang, Dot pressed a button on the small, outdated flip phone in her pocket, a direct line to Colonel Ray Iron Eagle Davis, the leader of the Steel Guardians, a motorcycle club made up of veterans she had once served with. Dot had saved Ray's life during a harrowing mission decades ago, and he'd never forgotten it. "Ray," Doc said calmly into the phone, loud enough for the gang to hear. "You remember that favor you owe me?" On the other end of the line, Ray's voice was steady and firm. "Say the word, Dot. We'll be there." "I think it's time to cash in." The Jackals had no idea what was coming. They were too busy jeering at Dot, who remained calm as she climbed into her station wagon and drove off. Mace watched her go, his arrogance undiminished. "She'll learn," he muttered. "No one disrespects the Jackals." Dot returned to her cottage, where she calmly brewed a pot of tea and waited. It wasn't long before the thunder of engines filled the air, not the chaotic growl of the Jackals' bikes, but the disciplined rumble of the Steel Guardians. One by one, they pulled up to Dot's driveway, their bikes gleaming and their leather jackets bearing military patches and insignias. Colonel Ray Davis dismounted first, his rugged face breaking into a rare smile as he embraced Dot. "You always did know how to pick a fight," he joked. Dot returned the smile, "and you always knew how to end one." Behind him, the Guardians formed a protective circle around Dot's home. Among them were veterans of every major conflict since Vietnam, men and women who had faced the horrors of war and come out stronger for it. Their presence alone was enough to intimidate most adversaries, but Dot knew the Jackals wouldn't back down easily. Ray's tone grew serious. "What's the plan, Dot?" Dak poured a cup of tea and handed it to him. "The Jackals think they own this town. They're wrong, but we won't stoop to their level. We fight smart." As the Guardians strategized, Dot made another call, this time to the Harmony Creek Town Council. She explained the situation and secured their support for a bold plan to take back the town from the Jackals without a single bullet fired. While the Jackals celebrated at their hideout, oblivious to the storm brewing against them, the Steel Guardians executed a precise operation. They reached out to local business owners, offering protection and solidarity. They set up patrols around the town, ensuring the Jackals' every move was observed and documented. Meanwhile, Dot coordinated with the council to cut off the Jackals' resources. The town's gas stations, hardware suppliers, and diners, all intimidated into compliance by the gang, were quietly persuaded to stop serving them. Overnight, the Jackals found themselves isolated, their grip on Harmony Creek loosening. When Mace discovered the town's defiance, he was livid. He stormed into one of the gas stations, slamming his fist on the counter. "Who do you think you're messing with?" he roared. The attendant, bolstered by the presence of two Guardians nearby, replied calmly, "Someone who doesn't scare us anymore." Mace's anger boiled over. "Fine, if the town wants a fight, we'll give them one." What the Jackals didn't realize was that the Guardians had already anticipated their retaliation. Hidden cameras and undercover operatives had been documenting their extortion schemes, their threats. Dot had ensured that when the Jackals made their next move, the evidence would be airtight. As the days went by, the tension in Harmony Creek reached its peak. The Jackals, frustrated by their dwindling resources and the town's newfound resistance, began planning their ultimate show of dominance, a public demonstration of power that would terrify the townsfolk into submission. But Dot and the Steel Guardians were always one step ahead. One crisp autumn evening, as the Jackals convened at their hideout to finalize their plans, Dot and Ray stood on her porch, watching the sunset. The Guardians were scattered across town, blending into the community, ensuring the safety of every citizen. "I don't like leaving anything to chance," Ray muttered, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Neither do I," Dot replied, her voice calm but resolute. "But this isn't just about taking down the Jackals. It's about showing Harmony Creek that they have the strength to stand together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Dot made one final call, this time to an old contact from her days in the military. General Evelyn Hawk Carter had transitioned into the Department of Homeland Security after her service and owed Dot a debt for a daring rescue mission years ago. "Evelyn, I need your help," Dot said without preamble. "I'm listening," Evelyn replied. "By tomorrow, I need a federal task force stationed just outside of Harmony Creek. The Jackals are planning something big, and we've got enough evidence to put them away for good. I need you to ensure they don't slip through the cracks." Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Consider it done." The next morning, Harmony Creek woke up to an air of nervous anticipation. The Guardians had subtly spread the word that the Jackals were planning something major. The townsfolk, tired of living in fear, took up Dot's challenge to stand united. Shopkeepers, teachers, farmers, and retirees all came together, armed not with weapons but with courage and resolve. Meanwhile, the Steel Guardians fortified their positions. They had strategically placed roadblocks around the town, limiting the Jackals' ability to maneuver. Dot had even rigged a few old military gadgets to disrupt the gang's communications, ensuring they couldn't coordinate effectively. At noon, the Jackals roared into the town square, their engines deafening. Mace, flanked by his most loyal lieutenants, dismounted his bike and scanned the crowd. His smirk returned as he saw the townspeople gathered, their faces a mix of fear and determination. "Well, well," Mace drawled, spreading his arms wide. "Looks like Granny's little pep talk worked. You all think you can stand against the Jackals?" No one answered. The silence was deafening. But it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the calm before the storm. Dot stepped forward, her small frame dwarfed by the imposing gang members. Her floral dress fluttered in the breeze, but her eyes were unyielding. "Mace," she began, her voice steady, "this is your last chance to leave Harmony Creek peacefully, Walk away now, and you won't face the consequences of your actions." Mace burst out laughing, a cruel, mocking sound that echoed through the square. "You're hilarious, Grandma, but let me tell you how this is going to go. We're going to take what we want, and anyone who gets in our way is going to regret it." Dot didn't flinch. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small remote. Wrong answer. With the press of a button, the town's emergency sirens blared to life. Hidden speakers around the square broadcast Dot's voice, calm and commanding. "Townsfolk of Harmony Creek, the time has come to stand together. Show them we are not afraid." From every corner of the square, people stepped forward, surrounding the Jackals. They carried no weapons, only signs that read "Harmony United" and "We will not be intimidated." The gang's confidence began to waver as they realized they were outnumbered, not in force, but in spirit. Then, the Steel Guardians made their move. Emerging from the crowd formed a protective line around the townsfolk, their military training evident in their precise movements. Ray stepped forward. "Mace Connors, you and your gang are done here. Leave now or face the consequences." Mace sneered, but before he could respond, the sound of approaching vehicles filled the air. Black SUVs with federal insignia screeched to a halt at the edge of the square. Agents in tactical gear poured out, weapons drawn but pointed downward, their presence a silent warning. General Evelyn Carter stepped forward, her authoritative presence commanding attention. "Mace Connors, you and your gang are under investigation for extortion, drug trafficking, and a laundry list of other crimes. We have enough evidence to put you away for a very long time. I suggest you cooperate." The Jackals froze, their bravado evaporating. One by one, they dropped their weapons and raised their hands, realizing they had been outmaneuvered at every turn. As the federal agents took the Jackals into custody, the crowd erupted into cheers. Dot stood quietly, her heart swelling with pride as she saw the town reclaim its dignity. Ray approached her, a rare look of admiration on his face. "You did it, Dot. You gave this town its backbone." Dot smiled softly. "They always had it, it just needed a reminder." In the days that followed, Harmony Creek began to heal. The businesses reopened, the streets buzzed with life, and the fear that had gripped the town became a distant memory. The Steel Guardians stayed for a while, helping to rebuild and ensure the Jackals' remnants posed no further threat. Dot returned to her quiet life, content to let the town take the credit for its revival. But she couldn't escape the gratitude of her neighbors, who now saw her not just as a sweet old widow, but as the hero she had always been. One evening, as Dot sat on her porch with a cup of tea, Ray joined her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know," he began, "there's always room for you with the Guardians. You've still got the fight in you." Dot chuckled, her eyes twinkling. "Oh, Ray, I think I've had enough excitement for one lifetime. But don't be a stranger. Harmony Creek might not need me anymore, but there's always room for an old friend." As the sun set over the peaceful town, Dot allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Harmony Creek was safe, and she had played her part. But deep down she knew that if trouble ever came knocking again, she would be ready. Because Dorothy Larkin wasn't just a sweet old widow. She was a force to be reckoned with. And that was a lesson no one would ever forget. The Jackals were gone, and Harmony Creek returned to its idyllic tranquility. But for Dorothy Larkin, the calm was deceptive. The battle with the gang had reignited something within her, a flicker of purpose that she hadn't felt since her days in the military. Though the town had healed, the memories of her daring confrontation lingered, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of unfinished business. It was a brisk autumn morning when Dot received a letter that would once again turn her world upside down. The envelope was plain, but the postmark was from South Korea, the country where she had earned her reputation as a fearless reconnaissance officer. She opened it with care, her hands steady despite the decades that had passed. The letter was from an old friend, Colonel Min Jae Kim, a South Korean intelligence officer she had worked closely with during the war. His message was brief but urgent. "Dorothy, I need your help. An old adversary has resurfaced, and I fear his reach extends even to your quiet town. Come to Seoul if you can. Details will follow." Dot stared at the letter, her mind racing. She hadn't heard from Min Jae in decades, but she trusted him implicitly. If he was reaching out now, it wasn't a trivial matter. Later that day, as she sat on her porch sipping tea, Ray Iron Eagle Davis pulled up on his Harley. He dismounted with his usual air of confidence and joined her on the porch. Got that look in your eye again, Dot, Ray said, settling into the chair beside her. What's going on? Dot handed him the letter. Ray read it carefully, his brow furrowing as he finished. This sounds serious. You thinking of going? Dot nodded. I owe Minjae my life. If he's asking for help, it's not something I can ignore. Ray leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. You're not going alone. If this old adversary is as dangerous as he hints, you'll need backup. Dot smiled, grateful for his unwavering loyalty. I was hoping you'd say that. The Steel Guardians were quick to rally behind Dot. Ray called a meeting at their clubhouse where Dot explained the situation. She didn't have many details, but the mention of an adversary with far-reaching influence was enough to mobilize the group. This isn't just about me, Dot said, addressing the gathered Guardians. If Minjae is right, this could affect Harmony Creek and beyond. I need your help to ensure our town, and others like it, stay safe. The Guardians, a mix of veterans and loyal allies, nodded in agreement. Among them was Jenny Fox Martinez, a former intelligence analyst with a knack for uncovering hidden threats. She volunteered to join Dot and Ray on the trip to Seoul. As they prepared for the journey, Dot dusted off her old military trunk, pulling out maps, dossiers, and equipment she hadn't used in years. She also retrieved a faded photograph of herself and Minjae, taken during a rare moment of levity during the war. The photo reminded her of the bond they had shared, a bond forged in the crucible of combat. The next day, Dot, Ray, and Jenny boarded a plane bound for Seoul. Dot hadn't traveled internationally in years, but the weight of the mission pushed aside any apprehension she might have felt. She couldn't shake the feeling that this trip would change everything. Upon arriving in Seoul, the trio was greeted by Colonel Min-jae Kim, who had aged gracefully but carried the same steely determination Dot remembered. He led them to a secure location where he laid out the details of the threat. Our adversary, Min-jae began, is a man named Viktor Orlov. He was a Russian mercenary during the Korean War, operating in the shadows. We believed he had disappeared after the war, but recent intelligence suggests he's been building a criminal empire spanning multiple continents. Min-jae paused, his expression grave. Orlov has targeted Harmony Creek because of its strategic location. It's a gateway to several key trade routes, and he intends to use it as a hub for his operation. Dot listened intently, her mind already formulating a plan. Why now? Why Harmony Creek? Min-jae sighed. He's testing the waters. The Jackals were likely a small part of his network, a way to establish a foothold. When you dismantled their operation, it drew his attention. He sees you as a threat. Ray leaned forward, his tone sharp. Then we'll take the fight to him before he can strike. Min-jae nodded. That's the idea. But this won't be easy. Orlov is meticulous and he has eyes everywhere. We'll need to move carefully. The next few days were a whirlwind of planning and reconnaissance. Min-jae provided intelligence on Orlov's operations, including the locations of his key lieutenants and supply chains. Jenny used her analytical skills to identify weak points in Orlov's network, while Ray coordinated with local allies to secure resources. Dot, meanwhile, reached out to old contacts in the intelligence community. Many were surprised to hear from her, but didn't hesitate to offer their support. Her reputation as a formidable operative preceded her even after all these years. Their first target was a warehouse on the outskirts of Seoul, believed to be a hub for Orlov's arms smuggling operation. Dot and her team devised a plan to infiltrate the facility, gather evidence, and disrupt the supply chain. On the night of the operation, Dot donned her old military jacket, the patches and insignia as a stark reminder of her past. As they approached the warehouse, she felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. This was where she belonged, on the front lines, fighting for what mattered. The mission went smoothly at first. Dot and Ray neutralized the guards with precision, while Jenny hacked into the warehouse's security system to retrieve critical data. But as they were about to leave, they encountered an unexpected figure, a young woman who claimed to be an informant working against Orlov. "My name is Hana," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "I've been gathering information on Orlov for months. I can help you, but you need to trust me." Dot studied Hana carefully, her instincts telling her the woman was sincere. "Why are you doing this?" Hana hesitated before answering. "Arlov destroyed my family. I want to see him brought to justice." Dot nodded, sensing the truth in her words. "Then you're with us." With Hana's help, Dot and her team gained valuable insight into Arlov's operation. But the deeper they delved, the more dangerous the mission became. Arlov was no ordinary adversary. He was cunning, ruthless, and always one step ahead. As they prepared for the next phase of their mission, Dot couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. From a quiet widow in Harmony Creek to the leader of a multinational effort to take down a criminal empire. The stakes were higher than ever, but she knew she couldn't back down. The fight was just beginning, and Dorothy Larkin was ready to face whatever came next. With Hana's guidance, the scope of Viktor Arlov's network began to take shape. The man operated like a spider spinning a vast web, with tendrils that stretched across borders and oceans. Each strand of his operation was interconnected, and while dismantling one piece could cause disruption, Dot and her team knew they had to go for the spider itself, the man at the center of it all. But back at their safe house in Seoul, Dot laid out a map on the table, marking key locations Hana had provided. Every warehouse, dock, and safe house pointed toward one conclusion. Arlov wasn't just running an empire of crime, he was preparing for something bigger. "This isn't just about arms or money," Jenny said, reviewing the encrypted files she had recovered. "There's chatter about something called Operation Iron Tides. It's a code name, but I can't figure out what it means yet." Ray frowned, crossing his arms. "If it's anything like what we've seen so far, it's bad news." Hana, who had grown more confident with each passing day, leaned over the map. "Arlov operates out of a central command post. It's never in the same place for too long. That's why he's so hard to track. But I know someone who might have the location." Dot looked at her expectantly. "Who?" Hana hesitated. "His name is Dmitry Kozlov. He's one of Arlov's most trusted lieutenants, but he's greedy. If we can catch him off guard, he might be willing to trade information for his freedom." Ray scoffed. "And what's to stop him from double-crossing?" Dot's gaze was steady. "We'll make sure he doesn't have the chance." The plan to corner Dmitry Kozlov took them to the bustling streets of Busan, where the lieutenant was known to frequent a luxury casino owned by one of Arlov's front companies. The casino was a glittering fortress, its neon lights illuminating the harbor and drawing in high rollers from around the world. It was the perfect place for someone like Kozlov to blend in, rich, powerful, and untouchable. Dot, Ray, Jenny, and Hana entered the casino separately, each playing their role. Dot, dressed in an elegant but understated black dress, took her position at the bar, where she could keep an eye on the floor. Ray, in a sharp suit that looked slightly out of place on his rugged frame, posed as a gambler, his demeanor relaxed but alert. Jenny monitored the casino's surveillance system from a nearby van, while Hana worked the floor, posing as a waitress. It wasn't long before Dmitry Kozlov appeared, surrounded by bodyguards and exuding an air of smug confidence. He was a tall man with a sharp jawline and a taste for excess, his fingers adorned with gaudy rings. Dot watched him closely, noting his every move. "Target acquired," Denny's voice crackled through the earpiece. "He's heading to the VIP lounge. You'll need a way in." Dot sipped her drink, her mind racing. The VIP lounge was heavily guarded, but Hana had an idea. "There's a private elevator," Hana whispered into her comm. "I can distract the guards long enough for you to slip in." Dot didn't hesitate. "Do it!" As Hana approached the guards with a tray of drinks, Dot moved swiftly, blending into the crowd. When the guards turned their attention to Hana, Dot slipped past them and into the elevator. She adjusted her earpiece, her voice calm. "I'm in." The VIP lounge was a stark contrast to the glitz of the casino floor. It was quieter, more exclusive, with plush seating and dim lighting. Dmitry Kozlov sat at a private table, his bodyguards stationed nearby. He was in the middle of a card game, laughing loudly as he raked in his winnings. Dot approached the table with the confidence of someone who belonged. "Mind if I join?" Kozlov looked up, surprised but intrigued. "And who might you be?" "Someone who knows an opportunity when she sees one," Dot replied smoothly, taking a seat. And I hear you're a man who appreciates opportunities. Koslov chuckled, motioning for a drink. I like your style, lady, but if you're here to sell me something, I'm not interested. Dot leaned in, her voice low. I'm not selling anything. I'm offering you a way out. The humor vanished from Kozlov's face. Out of what? Out of Orlov's reach, Dot said, her tone sharp. I know who you work for, and I know how dangerous he can be. But I also know you've been skimming off the top. How long do you think it'll be before he finds out? Kozlov's eyes narrowed. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I, Dot countered. I have evidence that ties you to accounts Orlov doesn't know about. If I found them, he will too. But I can make that problem disappear, if you help me. Kozlov hesitated, the gears in his mind turning. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. What do you want? Dot's gaze was unwavering. I want Viktor Orlov. Kozlov gave them the information they needed. A remote compound in the mountains, heavily fortified and accessible only by a single road. It was Orlov's current base of operations and the heart of his empire. But getting there wouldn't be easy. The compound was surrounded by armed guards, surveillance drones, and state-of-the-art security systems. Back at the safe house, the team worked tirelessly to develop a plan. Jenny analyzed the compound's schematics, identifying weak points in the defenses. Ray coordinated with local allies to secure supplies, while Hannah used her connections to gather intel on the guards' routines. Dot, meanwhile, prepared for the mission with a sense of resolve she hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about taking down a criminal empire. It was about protecting the people she cared about, the town that had become her home, and the legacy she had fought so hard to build. The night before the mission, Dot gathered the team for one final briefing. This is our chance to put an end to this, she said, her voice steady. Orlov thinks he's untouchable, but he's wrong. We've faced worse odds before, and we've come out on top. Let's make this count. The mission began at dawn, under the cover of darkness. Dot and her team approached the compound in a convoy of unmarked vehicles, their movements precise and calculated. As they neared the perimeter, Jenny disabled the security cameras, while Hannah planted explosives on key structures to create a distraction. When the first explosion rocked the compound, chaos erupted. Guards scrambled to respond, giving Dot and her team the opening they needed to infiltrate the facility. Ray led the charge, his years of combat experience evident in every move he made. Hannah provided cover, her sharpshooting skills honed from years of practice. Dot and Jenny navigated the labyrinthine halls of the compound, their goal clear, Orlov's command center. When they finally reached it, they found him waiting, his expression a mix of surprise and fury. You, Orlov spat, his voice dripping with contempt. The widow from Harmony Creek. Dot smirked. You've done your homework, but it won't save you. Orlov reached for a weapon, but Dot was faster. She disarmed him with a swift motion, her years of training coming to the forefront. As he fell to the ground, she stood over him, her gaze cold. It's over, she said. With Orlov in custody and his empire dismantled, the team returned to Harmony Creek as heroes. The town welcomed them with open arms, grateful for their courage and determination. Dot, however, remained humble, knowing that the fight had been a collective effort. As she sat on her porch, watching the sunset over the creek, Ray joined her, a satisfied smile on his face. You did good, Dot, he said. Dot nodded, her heart full. We all did. Though the battle was over, Dot knew there would always be more challenges ahead, but with her team by her side and her town behind her, she was ready for whatever came next. The widow of Harmony Creek had found her purpose again, and she wasn't about to let it go. The morning sun filtered through the trees surrounding Harmony Creek, casting long shadows across the town that had returned to its peaceful rhythm. Dot sat on her porch with a steaming cup of tea, her gaze drifting toward the creek that wound through the heart of the town. Though the fight against Orlov had concluded, a lingering unease hung in the air, like the quiet before a storm. Dot's instincts told her the story wasn't over yet. Her intuition was confirmed when Jenny hurried up the walkway, her laptop tucked under one arm and a stack of papers in the other. She looked concerned, her brow furrowed, as she waved to Dot. We might have another problem. Dot set her cup down and motioned for Jenny to sit beside her. Let me guess. Orlov wasn't working alone. Jenny nodded, her face grim. I've been going through the encrypted files we recovered from his compound. Most of it's standard, financial records, supply routes, client lists. But then I found something odd. Dot leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. Go on. Jenny opened her laptop and pulled up a file labeled Project Echo. It's a series of communications between Arlov and someone who goes by the codename Spectre. They've been corresponding for years. Arlov mentioned him during his interrogation, but we thought he was bluffing. Spectre, Don repeated, the name heavy with implication. What does he want? Jenny scrolled through the documents, her fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. From what I can piece together, Spectre isn't just another client. He's a facilitator, a ghost, who connects powerful criminals, brokers deals, and keeps his hands clean. He's the one who helped Arlov establish his empire. Doc's expression hardened, so we cut off one head and another rises to take its place. Exactly, Jenny said. But there's more. Spectre's last message to Arlov wasn't about their operations. It was about us. He knows what we've done. The weight of Jenny's words hung in the air. Dot felt the familiar spark of determination ignite within her. If Spectre knows we're coming, then we'll have to outmaneuver him. Jenny hesitated. There's one more thing. Spectre isn't just an individual. He's the leader of a network, a shadow organization that spans continents. If we're going after him, we're not just taking on one man. We're taking on an entire system. Dot stood, her resolve unshaken. Then we'll do what we've always done. We'll fight smart. The next few days were a flurry of activity as the team regrouped and prepared for their next mission. Ray returned from a supply run, his arms laden with gear. Hana sharpened her skills at the shooting range, her focus sharper than ever. Jenny dove deeper into Spectre's network, mapping out connections and uncovering hidden. Dot meanwhile reached out to old contacts, people she hadn't spoken to in years but who owed her favors. Among them was Eliza Kane, a former intelligence operative who now worked as a private investigator in Tokyo. Eliza's expertise in tracking elusive targets made her an invaluable ally. Eliza arrived in Harmony Creek 2 days later, her presence commanding and her demeanor no nonsense. She carried a leather satchel filled with documents and a laptop covered in stickers. You weren't kidding when you said you had a big fish on the line, she said, shaking Dot's hand. Spectre's name is whispered in intelligence circles, but no one's ever seen his face. Dot smiled. Then it's time we change that. Eliza spread out a series of maps and dossiers on the kitchen table. Spectre operates through proxies, but I've traced several of his key associates to a secure facility in Istanbul. It's a data center disguised as a shipping warehouse. If we can access their servers, we might be able to pinpoint Spectre's location. Ray examined the map, his finger tracing the route to the facility. What kind of resistance are we looking at? Armed guards, surveillance drones, and a state-of-the-art alarm system, Eliza replied. It's not impenetrable, but it won't be a walk in the park. Dot nodded, her mind already working through the logistics. Then we'll need to split into 2 teams, one to create a diversion and the other to infiltrate the facility. The operation in Istanbul began under the cover of night. The team moved like shadows, their movements synchronized and precise. Ray led the diversion team, setting off a series of controlled explosions on the far side of the compound. The guards scrambled to respond, leaving the facility's interior vulnerable. Dot, Jenny, and Eliza slipped inside, navigating the labyrinth of corridors with the help of a detailed blueprint. They encountered minimal resistance thanks to the diversion, but the tension was palpable. Every step felt like a test of their resolve. When they reached the server room, Jenny quickly got to work, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she bypassed the security protocols. Eliza stood guard at the door, her weapon at the ready, while Dot kept an eye on the monitors. We're in, Jenny said, her voice steady despite the pressure. I'm downloading the data now. The process took only minutes, but it felt like an eternity. When the download was complete, the team retraced their steps, their exit as seamless as their entry. They regrouped with Ray and Hana at a safe house on the outskirts of the city, where Jenny immediately began analyzing the data. What she found was both shocking and chilling. Spectre's network is even bigger than we thought, Jenny said, her voice laced with disbelief. He has assets in every major city from New York to Beijing. But the most disturbing part is this. Operation Echo isn't just about control, it's about influence. Dot frowned. Influence how? Jenny turned her laptop toward the team, revealing a series of intercepted communications. The Spectre isn't just running a criminal empire. He's infiltrating governments, corporations, and media outlets. He's shaping policies, manipulating markets, and controlling narrative. Hannah's eyes widened. He's not just a criminal, he's a puppet master. Ray's jaw tightened, and we're the ones pulling the strings out of his grasp. Dot leaned back, her mind racing. Spectre's reach was unprecedented, but so was their determination. They had uncovered the truth, and now it was up to them to act. We have two options, Dot said, her voice calm but firm. We can go after Spectre directly, or we can dismantle his network, piece by piece. Either way, we need to move quickly. The longer we wait, the stronger he becomes. Eliza studied the data, her expression thoughtful. If we target his assets, we can weaken his foundation. But to bring him down completely, we'll need to force him out of hiding. And how do we do that? Hannah asked. Dot's eyes gleamed with determination. We make him think he's already lost. The plan was bold, risky, and required flawless execution. Using the data they had recovered, the team launched a coordinated effort to disrupt Spectre's operations. They exposed corrupt officials, leaked financial records, and dismantled smuggling routes. Each move was calculated to create chaos within Spectre's ranks, forcing him to respond. At the same time, they planted false information, leading Spectre to believe he had a mole within his inner circle. The goal was to sow distrust and paranoia, making him desperate enough to reveal himself. Days turned into weeks as the plan unfolded. The team worked tirelessly, their resolve unwavering, and then, finally, it happened. A message appeared on one of Spectre's encrypted channels, a direct response to their actions. It was short and to the point. You've made your move, now it's my turn. I'll read the message aloud, her voice steady. He's taking the bait. Ray crossed his arms, which means we need to be ready for whatever comes next. Dot nodded, her gaze unwavering. We've come this far, we're not backing down now. As the team prepared for the final showdown, Dot couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had faced impossible odds and emerged stronger for it. And though the battle wasn't over, one thing was clear. Together, they were unstoppable. Enjoyed this video? There's another incredible one right here. Subscribe now to make sure you're the first to see all our newest stories.